Alrighty. Hey, Steve Hodgden, Modern Asset Management. My partner, Nick Curry, is going to be signing on in a minute. I want to say thank you for coming. And the subject matter tonight is an out-of-state project that we did that everything went wrong. It could go wrong, and it still came out okay. And I wanted to walk through that transaction. Dion DePauli is going to be joining us, and Dion was instrumental in helping cause the problem and solving the problem and all that good stuff. So, some of you may know me from the note investing space. Modern Asset Management holds about 30 mortgages around the country. The last year, we've been centered primarily on fix and flip to seller finance in Pensacola, Florida. We've built a couple of houses down there. We've financed some lots. Our core business is unsecured lending, primarily in the medical elective surgery space, and that takes a big chunk of our time. Nick and I just came back from Gary Johnston's Masters of Real Estate weekend in Las Vegas. And every time I go to an event like that or see any of you guys at local stuff in Southern California, I always come back to, why am I doing so much hard work when I could be doing more real estate and more notes and not running as hard as we do. But I guess that comes back to, we just probably like it. So, and it pays. So anyway, we got a handful of folks on. So I'm going to get started. So what I should do, first thing is, you are looking at a screen of a beautiful white Ferrari California T edition. And as I said at the top of that, it is not my car, but the man who drives it says I paid for it because he's an investor, and we've done a lot of work for him over the last couple of years. So my car is, because I would never own this car, never. Why? Oh my gosh, I could buy 2 houses. I could buy 2 rental units for what this car cost. So I guess I'm still building. I'm not spending. I went through a period of my life where I was spending, and I was too young to do that. So that puts me back here working, and it's not time for me to drive a Ferrari. But anyway, so I'm going to change to talking about, let's find it. A house that we bought through a foreclosure. And let me, oops, I got to figure out how to get that listing up.
While Steve's doing that, I encourage everybody, as a fan of Ferrari myself, and also the investment community. There's a Wall Street Journal article on how the ownership of Ferrari over the last 30 years has outperformed all the major indices, Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ. It's out there.
Okay, thanks. So let's see if we can share this screen. I'm going to stop the share. Hey, there's Nick. Hey, Nick. So now I want to share a Zillow screen. Here we go. It's out of the way. In May of 2017, May of 2017, this house you see there was in a pre-foreclosure status. I bought it. The borrowers had been in residence a long time. They owed almost $70,000 in principal. I bought this note for $110,000. It was, like I said, an executive home, in Merrillville, Indiana, which is a suburb to the southeast of Chicago. And this neighborhood is primarily just what you see back there in the trees, quarter-acre lots in an executive-style neighborhood. There's a country club down the road just a little bit. But in a world where there no longer are lots of executives living in country club style homes playing golf, because all those businesses were sent out of, all those manufacturing businesses were sent out of Indiana and Chicago and off to outsourced in other parts of the world, or technology drove them out. So this house had a UPB, I'm sorry, this house had a BPO value of about $250,000. So we thought buying it for 110 and selling it fast at the auction would be the deal. It was a really short timeline. We bought this. Oh, Dion's on the phone. Hey, Dion. Let me unmute you. We bought this at $110,000. We put it up for auction. We were racing to put it up for auction, and in the time frame to get our max bid in, our max bid wound up getting recorded for the owing balance, $168,000. So nobody bid, and we won. And that was not what we were starting out to do. So here I am sitting with a house in the middle of the country, me sitting in Southern California, and I am suddenly an unintentional rehabber. The good news is that the reason that this note was a good idea for us is that Dion actually lives 20 minutes away from this property. And so there we are. So, Dion, you want to say hi? Well, let's find out if Dion's there. Dion, you there? Well, until he jumps in. Let's see. There he is. Oh, will you get something with a speaker? I can't hear you. You got to get connected somehow. Hey, there you are.
But you can see me, yeah?
Yeah. Okay, now we can.
Okay, now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but now get rid of the.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can hear you and see you, Dan.
Can you hear me?
Now get rid of the feedback loop.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is it slow? Yeah.
So let's see. We were trying to get out at 125. Didn't get out at 125. Went out and got estimates at 95. I'm stalling while I'm looking at how to give you control of the video. Up at the top on your toolbar, or on the right where it says more in your toolbar, look to see if it says share. Nick, jump in if you remember.
No, Steve, if you unshare, he should have the ability to share.
Yeah. Okay, now I've done that. Okay. Now you can share.
Yeah. Bottom middle, Dion. Green button.
Sure. Got it.
So David asked if the BPO was 250, why was no one interested at 125? And Dion talked about that a little bit, because it's just not who that market is. That market is primarily cash flow investors looking to buy cheap rentals, do Section 8s and that kind of stuff. So these larger homes don't have quite the calling that a house half the size would. So $120,000 spend cuts out a lot of the buyers. All right, Dion, we're looking at pictures now. Go.
Yeah. So this was original acquisition, right? Post share sale, interior wasn't in great shape nor bad shape, pretty average. It's 1970 built, needed some updates. These pictures aren't great.
It was rentable. It was absolutely rentable.
Yeah. And so, the story behind the deed here was this particular borrower was, thought he was an investor, came in, bought this, thought he was going to make repairs, didn't make, made, I think 3 or 4 payments on his loan, and ended up being foreclosed, right? So the asset, had a lot of deferred maintenance, it's just random stuff. But the shell is in pretty good shape. This was a technical 5-bedroom ranch. And it's, as Steve said earlier, it was very, very large. And, some of these earlier stage pictures don't do it justice because you can't really understand the depth of this. But so this is the basement. That's the fireplace in the basement. It ends up being a 2,500 square foot footprint. And there's a basement with a walkout. It's a subterranean walkout, but you got a walkout. We're in the Midwest, ladies and gentlemen. So you got a footprint of, pushing 4,600 square feet here. And the basement is it's been developed, right? So this is a wet bar. This is the 5th bedroom. Back here was another bathroom. This is actually the walkout for the downstairs. So when we walked into this, nobody'd probably been in this asset for probably a good 2 years, safe to say. We got a little bit of mold issues, and this will lead us into some of the biggest issues. That's another picture of the this was the washer and dryer room. The basement's giant. As we showed this, I would make the joke that you need a way to get around.
Dion, excuse me. Are you bouncing through pop-outs of those pictures?
What do you mean?
All I see is the film strip of the units. If you're bouncing through them, showing larger images, you need to change your share screen to be that pop-out.
Okay, tell me how to do that because I don't know what you're saying.
So, new share.
Where?
And mine is the ribbon on the bottom where it says share. Right, yours says new share. Stop share.
Hold on a second. Wait.
Logged out.
Yeah, he be on unshared and ended meeting. He'll be back in a moment. So, let me see if I can. Yeah.
What would a home like this have rented for in Lake County, Illinois?
That would have been. Oh, here he comes. That would have been $1,400 a foot, I think, or $1,400 a month, I think. I need to re-invite Dion, unmute, and.
Oh.
You're back.
There we go. All right.
All right. I made you co-host, and that should make it. All right. Let's get moving. We got to keep these people. You got to. It's late. Yeah, let's keep going.
I know. Listen, it's late here. Stop pressuring me. Can you see that?
Hey.
Yeah. There we go. All right. Thanks, Nick. Now I can see you. Life's better. All right, so this is the basement. This is the side of the basement.
Before,
so we're giving you,
right?
Yes. Can we do that? Pause with us, ladies and gentlemen. Anyways, so moral of the story is, so, we had a slightly, it was slightly dilapidated. I would call it an average disrepair, right? It didn't seem like that is not what we want. That's what we want. Slight disrepair. And so we put it to auction, right? We put it to auction at what we thought was a pretty decent value. Pencil sketches were $250,000 after repaired value. We put it out to auction, 120. We put it to market. We put it to auction at like 110, something like that, 110. we put it to auction or list price at 120. We had bids at 180, 85, and I think 90. We might have tacked on 100, but we never cleared six figures. And so from that point, we entered into the next capital scenario, right? Which is really some of what the point is here. So at that point, we found a local investor that was willing to team up and bring capital. And so their contribution was the repairs. And for that, we created a dissemination of equity where the initial mortgagee investment as a note investor was set aside because they brought on the REO. We took that capital investment. We created a gain on that margin, and then we created a gain on the investment budget, and we created some high water marks. That was fairly complicated to say, so I'll bring it up on my screen. Right, so where's one of the best ones here? So in this particular, these are real numbers actually. It's chicken scratch.
We don't have a share yet.
You can't see that?
Nope. Nope.
New share. Oh. How about that? Yes. Wait. I get it now. You got to do it. You got to click every different screen. Yeah. Can you see that?
Yes.
All right. So let's focus here. Right. So this is really what nuts and bolts the deal ended up looking like. Right. We created an after repair value. We understood what the construction budget was going to be. So this 130 was the value of the note plus a capital gain. And we went to a local investor and said, rehab with this much capital improvement. Plus we added their gain protection in here. And everybody was pushing, just call it 20%, right? Just for easy math. So everybody's got their capital in and a 20% gain on their money baked into these numbers. That creates, let's call that a high watermark. So the $190,000 is fundamentally what we all say is we're going to take this asset on, at the very least, we net 190. And this is how this splits up, right? So there's a gain built in to this idea, right? If everybody makes this, nobody spends any more money than they budgeted, this is a deal. That's not reality because stuff happens, but that's the deal, right? And so that's why you set that aside. Then we said, well, what happens if you make more money than that? Well, if we sell it and we have a better gain for whatever that is, and that net gain becomes more, then this is how we'll split it. And so in this particular case, that was a 50% split. Now reality set in. So Steve sits on the West Coast, very calmly, by the way. He was very calm through all of this. It was diabolically calm. But so you know, we bring in the local investor, we bring in that local influence, and you know, look, I'll tell you, you know, I've managed a lot of assets, and I've managed them from afar a lot, and this was interesting because I have a relationship with the firm that did this, and I would do it tremendously different if I had to do it over. Because there's this general idea on what the improvements to the real property are going to be. And you hear about things, and we're doing things that commonly sound like common sense. And this particular property was a real interesting asset. And, you know, for those that don't know, the first time callers, long time listeners, I've been in the real estate industry for a long time. I've gone through a lot of assets. I'm also a licensed real estate agent. I've traded a lot of non-performing loans throughout the U.S., a lot of bad markets, seen a lot of bad stuff. Been through this many times. So moral of the story is, you would have thought we were making the right decisions. We had a pretty, we thought we had a pretty decent grasp of a median market in our backyard, my backyard, with on-the-ground resources to capitalize construction, push the asset out. The improvements on the asset we thought would have pushed it out in a quicker manner. And so we pushed a little bit probably with the capitalization. But the good news is, in the arrangements between the capital partners, we created a bifurcation that protected everyone. And that was very important, because the rehab capital investor that came in had a budget. His budget was $60,000, and he overspent. And the $60,000 that was put in didn't bring us back what we needed, and the over expenditure of that $60,000 that was put in probably wasn't necessary. So there wasn't because it was his money, it was easier to say, it was easier to give a little bit more control. And that may or may not have been good. I think everybody learned a good lesson there. And just for the record, the capital contributor is also a good friend of mine, good guy. Certainly no malicious intent. I think there was just a lot of good lessons here. So we made typical improvements. We improved every single bathroom. We improved all of the we replaced 19 windows. We replaced the entire roof with 4 layers of shingles on top of it. Every single door. We repainted the entire house. We redid all of the floors. The main floor of the house mostly was covered up, old wood. So we refinished that. We had to go through a couple of coats. That said, some of the difficulties, once all of this work kind of came through, and if I understand how to do this, hold on one second. I'm going to show you some pictures.
All right, show some pictures, and I need to tighten us up because we're already running up against our hour. So maybe while you're looking for pictures, in all of the big words, one of the things we did when we got to the end of the day, the contractor who did the work, who was the partner, he owned 32% of the property, and I owned 68%. And when we got to the end, because of this job running really long and having the house coming out with some structural issues, we had some water in the basement. He had to overspend to get this thing done. We had to go back and carve out a bunch of drywall in the basement and re-rock it and get the deal closed. So we had this 50-50 spread over this high water mark that we had set. And I decided, because either I'm gullible or I really like the effort that Antoine put in, and I want to do more with him. Which brings us to what I want to talk about, the close. In opportunity zones, I want to look at doing opportunity zone work in Gary, and that brings me back to Antoine. I kicked in $3,000 to try to make Antoine whole. So he wound up overspending and having to eat some of that. I came back to the table with a little bit of money, because what we made for a $110,000 purchase, my net was $132,000. And the thing that makes me hate this job is that it took 17 months from start to finish. And that's where Dion was talking about, we let it get away from us. The contractor investor was over improving the asset. So we would, I think next time, Dion, you would say that I wouldn't be quite so calm. Maybe I should have been a little more forceful. Maybe I should have gone on site and kicked a little butt, So.
Again, I think it was easy to disregard the time of of the original capital invested, right? Because here you have a new investor. It's an interesting dilemma. You have a new investor that steps in, but your capital is already invested. So as we create that watermark and a pretty solid capital structure, ladies and gentlemen, these are the listing pictures. So this is the improvements to the asset. Looks pretty good, not gonna lie. Anyways, but the interesting thing is you know, you kind of say, all right, look, this guy's gonna walk in, he's gonna dump money into it. So I created this partnership with this third party is gonna bring in capital to improve this asset. And to that degree, you don't want to overly create a fire drill. You want to let him invest his capital, manage his money, and there was a little bit of we could have managed. Steve and I work well together. We understand what we do. I also have a relationship with Anton, but from an asset manager standpoint, on the paper side, you know, going through this kind of a relationship, I would overly manage this. I didn't manage this as well as I could have, and I think that was because, look, you're going to post up 60 grand, manage your money well, and schedule well. However, there still was risk in that, and I think that ultimately that ended up being some stuff that there's some anomalies in this house. This blue floor, this is the basement. I just want to point this out. So this basement cost us a tremendous amount of issues because there's condensation that happens on the walls because it's an REO and it's a giant basement. This is 2320 square foot basement. It collects moisture. We put dry green board on all these walls. So my best theory is it was collecting water and then it would pool up in the middle of this blue floor. And then as we would have showings, people would think that the floor was flooded. I'm not going to lie. And, you know, Steve can attest to that. He saw some of the showing reviews. But I think, you know, one of the capital ideas there is we gave a little bit too much permission and control without enough oversight, right?
We didn't have a clearly defined and agreed scope of work. We said, yes, Antoine's got his 60K in, let him run. And really everybody needs a manager. Everybody needs a supervisor, me included.
Right.
Everybody needs to answer to somebody.
And so we ended up with a capital partner that overspent. And that created issues with exit, you know, because we had some offers earlier in the scheme of things, but we had to play with them more than we should have because it was sensitive to try to get everybody out whole. So moral of the story is we ended up making a deal and everybody got out. Some people got out more whole than others, which is an interesting idea on why to make that watermark structure. I mean, in Steve's defense, Steve was extremely protected through that deal, right? Mm-hmm. And the other investor didn't come out so well, and Steve contributed. So, you know, that's a good way to set up that secondary capitalization. It's a good way to think about the asset, right? So I bought the asset from paper, I converted it into real property, and you know, and one of the ways you want to do that is kind of team up with maybe some local people. But now, you know, then comes the rest of that series of events that how do you team up with people and, you know, so on and so forth. So we'll leave this alone because we're running out of time, and we can start to skip into, I guess, some of the other stuff you want to talk about.
Yeah. So to recap, we bought an asset for $110,000, tried to sell it wholesale, wasn't able to get our $125,000 price. Decided we were going to rehab it ourselves. Found out that was going to be close to $100,000 to hire a local contractor. Dion brought a trusted, well-vetted partner in who contributed $60,000 in time and materials. That investor probably wound up spending north of, I know he did. He spent north of $70,000.
75. North of 70.
Yeah. So I got an annualized 13% return without having to get on an airplane. And I'm not happy with that, which just means there's something wrong. Um, and and the local guy who was supposed to be the smart guy took a hit for about $7,000. So
Yeah.
why would he ever talk to me again? And it's because I really like what he's doing in smaller houses in Gary and other areas around there. There's been a new wrinkle where the Fed has come out and identified opportunity zones with something called a QOZ, a Qualified Opportunity Zone, where the government is trying to get us to come in and invest and rehab and hold long term. And so, oh, look, it's the Opportunity Zone at Gary. We have to give, Dion, we have to give Nick a couple of slides to go over it from a larger perspective.
All right, Nick, you go first. I'll wait.
Okay, so let's let Nick take this. Nick, you have 10 minutes.
Sure. I'll be less than that. I have a question that some of the people on the call might ask. Time frame on purchase to how long did the repairs take on 57th Street?
Less than a year.
Oh, not yet. So repairs, we were done in fundamentally less than 120 days. Mm-hmm. We had, and when I say 120 days, the bulk of the repairs were done in less than 60. We had an ongoing misunderstanding of this water issue in the basement. It's a Midwest asset. I grew up in the Midwest, everybody. There was some water. This water tracing idea was something we really didn't understand. So that was a tagging maintenance thing that we had to run through a lot of the listing life cycle. But fundamentally, roof and massive remodel was done in probably less than 50 days.
If it was a smaller asset without this problem, we would have been on market inside of 5 months, probably 4. We also, because the asset was at the high end of the marketplace, we lingered on market through 4 months, I think.
Yeah.
Through a series of reductions because they're just the pool of buyers. The pool of buyers was really small. And it's a marketplace that doesn't have a lot of activity. It's not a Crown Point is a little quiet suburban area, and it just didn't have a lot of action.
Well, we had some very compelling comps within literally a stone's throw. So there was two comps literally sitting across the street, within 200 yards. That supported. One was our neighbor, supported 250,000. There was another ranch comp that looked like us, recently remodeled, that hit the 265 mark. So the community, it was an interesting community because there's some budding stuff that's been rehabilitated and there was some stuff that wasn't. And look, I'll be honest with you. I think what separated us from the value of those other things was the craftsmanship of the finishes. And I've already spoken with that with all the partners, so that's not damaging anybody, but there was a different level of craftsmanship to the other assets that hit the top of the line market. And that's an interesting thing to think about, right? So, investor number 2 comes in, he says, this is my capital budget. And, one of the things Steve and I never sat down and talked about is that the right amount of money for the fixtures and improvements that make this hit the top of the market? It was just like all right, problems on you. I mean, right? Steve, you got to some extent, that's sort of what you do. You're like, all right.
Exactly what we did. And especially in light that we had 2 estimates of 90,000 and here's a partner for 60. Well, it's all on him. Well, but he went in, did his best, produced a product we sold. And like I said, I'm unhappy with an annualized 13%. I made $22,000 in a year. So now here's the segue. I have a capital gain and I don't want to pay tax on it. Nick, what could I do with that?
Reinvest it. But where? Gary, Indiana, perfect example. So here, Dion, actually, if you give up control, I'm going to take the macro perspective, and then you can drill into Gary and tell us.
Release your screen.
Me?
Yeah. Dion, you have to release your screen so Nick can show his.
No, give it right back. Give it right back to you.
I see. It's like volley play. All right. Yeah. Getting it.
Basically. So this is something that we haven't touched on. You may have heard from hearsay, and especially I think Wall Street's from what I hear chasing this and trying to understand it. The concept is new. The Treasury has come out to clarify the rules, but there is economic incentive to go into areas that have been identified as it's specifically low income, other variables, but it's on a census tract level all across the U.S. So I have a breakdown of California by county on the next slide, and Dion will go into Gary, Indiana, but we are especially looking at areas where we can invest and one, not go in and overdevelop, because the particular areas that are QOZs are looking for investment of mid-range, mid to low range, but it's affordable housing. We've had success on the lower end of the spectrum, and stress and anxiety on the higher end of the spectrum, as those of you who have listened to Steve for a while know all about. I won't go into more detail about that, but
I'm never doing another $7 million project ever. No. This fits me so much better. I would much rather have $10,000, $50,000 houses. So
yeah, and really the kicker here is the economic incentive then that you get from our best friends. So 35 million Americans live in an opportunity zone. The median family income 37% below the area or state median on average. And so there's a link there. If you Google qualified opportunity zone list, you can get the Excel sheet, and it's by census tract again. So are all of the properties within that given census tract low income, troubled neighborhoods? Potentially no. So their census tracts, I had to go back and look at what actually defines a census tract, and Bureau of Census says it's about 2,500 to 8,000 relatively permanent people. So how large your census tract is in your particular area that you're looking at versus some of the ones that we've looked at in California and Florida could be this big, could be this big. So there's some arbitrage opportunity in here. And I think people are just starting to understand, since the list came out in June, what really what the niche is that they can go after. So this is a deferment or exemption of capital gain is what it is. And depending on how long.
Let me jump in. You and Dion both speak a language that guys like me don't understand. Deferment of income, bifurcation, all this kind of stuff. I'm going to sell an asset in California, and I'm going to have $100,000 capital gain. I do not want to give the federal government or the state of California that money. I'm going to have to give the state. I can't get out of it. But I don't want to pay the state of California, the U.S. income tax. If I go to Gary and I buy a decent or part of, in a partnership, buy a piece of a good apartment building in the path of progress with stable rents, and I hold that for 10 years, I don't have to pay any income tax on the whole thing. Yes?
Steve, thank you for asking that. Let me take a different explanational swing. So, as Steve and Nick know, we too have been doing some research on this, and obviously this is a new program, ladies and gentlemen. This is a tax program that was created. It was rolled out through Trump's tax bill in 2017. It went into effect, and it started for the tax year of 2018. And just to make sure I have a chance to state it as clearly as I can, so capital gains from January 1st, 2018 through December 31st, 2026 can be deferred. How can they be deferred? So you can defer those gains. It has to be specifically a capital gain, not taxation under interest income, a capital gain. So you can take that capital gain and you can invest it into an opportunity zone fund. The opportunity zone fund is an entity, whether that is tangible or intangible business, that invests fundamentally and primarily in an opportunity zone. The opportunity zone is a census district that has been approved by the federal government through application of the local municipalities for this tax relief program. Steve and Nick are, and a lot of you are probably out on the West Coast. I'm domiciled in the Midwest. I am in Northwest Indiana, which is a tertiary market of Chicago. We're a submarket of Chicago. So Gary, Indiana is a little bit of a stone's throw away. So as an example, Gary, Indiana has a total of 8 census districts. 6 of them are within approved opportunity investment zones, right? So in my backyard, I have a tremendous amount of opportunity. And I just want to point this out. In all of the 235,000 opportunity zones across the United States that are currently active, we so happen to be one of the small few that sit on a major body of water. That's Lake Michigan. We sit on that. One of the reasons when I came back to the Midwest was I looked at this asset, and Gary, Indiana is there's an interesting history there, and I'll condense it real short. Carnegie hired a guy with a last name Gary. He was a judge. He came over. He bought up all the land for U.S. Steel. U.S. Steel was Gary. That gentleman eventually made the municipality that is known as Gary, Indiana now. But it was fundamentally born through commerce and industry and so on and so forth. And a lot of the real estate assets that are owned in these zones they're blighted, they're dilapidated, and a lot of that has to do with the way that history has come down through the last 20, 40 years. And you can see this in a lot of different deprived census districts, right? And that's the point of this. The point is, take your capital gain, put it into a fund, and let that fund invest in a zone. And so what does that mean then? So if you're a fund and you invest in a zone, and I'm just going to skip to some stuff, right? So a fund is any entity that invests in an asset that is located in an approved zone, right? That's what it is. And the beautiful thing about this program is it is currently self-certifying. In other words, you don't need us. Right now, you don't need us. You can go buy an asset in what you believe to be a opportunity zone, and you can self-certify that you are a fund. And so far as you substantially improve that, you can enjoy the tax benefits. What does that mean? None of us really know. That's really the issue. So the guidance from the Treasury right now is, hey, take your gain, we'll give you some partial forgiveness, hold it for 10 years, and we'll give you full forgiveness, plus forgiveness on the gain of the asset you invested in. This is not to be confused with interest income. So if I'm a single family residence investor, which this works well for, if I'm a single family residence investor, I buy a lot. Let's just use Gary because I so happen to be the example. So let's say I sell you a lot in Gary for whatever, $40,000. We help you build a house for another $100,000. You sell that house in 10 years for $200,000. That gain, all zero. Plus the gain that you put in. So you took a gain and you put it in to initially capitalize that. Let's say it's $100,000. After 5 years, I'm gonna help you right here, right? So after 5 years of initial investment, you will have reduced your capital basis by 10%. In other words, the gain that you are taxed on is reduced by 10%. After 7 years, the gain that you are taxed on is reduced by 15%. After 10 years, the gain of the initial investment that you were deferring, zero. But now you qualify for the capital gain deferment on that subject asset. There will be requirements to file and recognize those gains at that future event. We don't understand what those are. I'm not here to tell you what those are. We need guidance from Treasury, accounting people that understand it a little bit better than I do. But I've been around this. We are on my side of the fence. We are heavily involved in the opportunity zone in Gary, Indiana. This is why I obviously have a PowerPoint. And I've had meetings with the city of Gary. We've had meetings with the third-party consultant that is here. We have a schedule of assets that have been highlighted from the city, and it's an interesting idea around the city of Gary. I'll break it down. City of Gary in 1962 was around 196,000 people. Now we're about 77,000, of which 34,000 is primary residence owners. So we're at 50% population, and a quarter of that population, or a quarter of the entire population, is actually people that care about their property. Half of what's all that is owned by investors that are absentee, and the other half is owned by the city itself. The city is an ironic, situation around the area. They have 9 zip codes. The average city around here is 1 zip code. They have a need to demolish 68,000 properties, plus minus. That would demolish every single zip code that I just mentioned that surrounds them. So, and the city of Gary is really one of the main hubs through, being a tertiary market of Chicago. It's a submarket of Chicago. There are massive artery lines. And so we've been doing a lot of discussions with the city of Gary. There is an improvement coming from the South Shore line, which is a commuter train line that runs from deep Chicago all the way over to South Bend. You can jump on that right now for less than $5, get to the city 50 minutes. They're doubling that up, so they'll reduce the cost, they'll improve the time. All the train stations will improve between Gary and there. And we're seeing an insurgence of capital through this OZ structure that is bringing in new ideas. We have Indiana University that's dumping, $45 million into the area. We have Ivy Tech that's dumping a lot of money. We have a very, very interesting opportunity here. And I share this with you, and I know I'm stealing Steve and Nick's thunder, but, I would tell you this. In the Midwest, we have assets that are pretty cheap. And, from the West Coast, I know the genre of the investor out there. We're trying to create opportunities over here through the opportunity zone and through the Opportunity Zone tax deferments that enhance an investor's capacity to invest. Further tax shelters that are included over here in our zone is most of the cities already included in a TIF. Most of the cities actually has been redefined into a port authority, which gives it additional tax incentives. And I don't know what's going on in other economic zones, right? I've spent a lot of time. I have a lot of interest focused on Gary because I think I can do some real serious damage. And acutely, I think I can help any of you that want to come this way. As Steve has mentioned, one of the partners here, Antoine, he's involved in this project. We have a seed round of capital, about $5 million coming in before December 31st. That's our first OZ capital funding. We're looking at taking on some legacy assets, which I'll tell you right now, ladies and gentlemen. I'll show you. Can you see this? Yeah. Wait. Let me do it this way. So it's safe to say we have a schedule of all the assets available that are for sale by the city, for sale by private owners, and up for demolition. We've gone through that. We've gone through some interesting conversations with the city, and we've come up with some pretty iconic pieces of real estate that we are actually looking at investing in. One is the convention center, One Genesis Convention Center, which is downtown Gary.
Dion, are we looking at a picture?
Can you see that?
No. Open up the PDF. Change your screen.
There you go.
There it is.
So, outside picture, this is a convention center. Believe it or not, in 2007, this actually held the Miss America pageant. So, it's a pretty iconic piece of real estate in Northwest Indiana. This is for sale. This is for sale from the city. As another example, we have, I can't see. What does this? We've also identified, wait for it. Yeah, new share, I got it. I'm getting this. New share and stuff. Yeah, there you go. This is an old hospital. This is an old hospital. It was briefly operated by the city. Again, this is a dilapidated city, but look at that building. It's in pretty good shape. So this was an old hospital. It was operated by the city. It was used as a veterans relief center. They've since vacated it. We are looking at it as a multi-family redevelopment project. The city is very happy with that idea. Additionally, I like this one just because it's got a good name. So this used to be the Sears Roebuck building in downtown Gary, steps away from the heart of downtown. So it's 126,000 square foot building. We envision that being redeveloped into retail and residential on top, mixed use fundamentally. And this is literally in the heart, stone's throw away from the convention center, the city center, and what will eventually start to be some of the downtown center for the train station and so forth.
Dion?
Yeah.
Dion, so I'd want an option on the piece of crap next door.
No, so I'm glad you said that, Steve, because look, as these opportunity zone things start to come about, and they're very new. I've been on many conference calls. I think I'm a little ahead of Steve and Nick on this. We've lined up a administrator. There's EB5 funds that are coming in to complement some of the OZ funds. I know of several high-level investment funds that have already raised north of $500 million. This is a big deal, and so it's an interesting question because it feels like it's like a hedge fund play, and yet the street-level investor doesn't get pushed out here because the beauty of this program is you're self-certified. Mm-hmm. So far as you can find an asset and create a business opportunity with that, and you are going to file the forms on your own, and we're working through some other additional supplemental support forms, you know, in terms of being certified in the tax district and bringing some, you know, third-party certification in for to ensure that you're not violating any of the rules as they go, and they're going to continually change. So you can do that your own. Right now, the current tax form is a one-pager, and you get to tag it on the back of your tax filings, and you can send it in. We can help you find that asset. We can help you redevelop that asset. We can help you come up with a plan for that asset. And, you know, in the zone that we see, assets are pretty inexpensive. That doesn't mean a build cost. So you can come in and buy, you know, a lot in the city of Gary for, you know, $500. You could buy a bad asset that's dilapidated and blighted completely for $500. You're going to spend money to improve that. And as far as we understand it, and I'm not your advisor, but the language from the Treasury is substantially improved, right? So you need to substantially improve it. Does that mean that if you buy it for X, you got to put X plus 2 in? I don't know. Consult your advisor. But there's a level there, and there may not be complete direction. But moral of the story is, if you're getting in, if you're buying a plot of land for cheap, or you're buying a piece of dilapidated real estate for what is presumably a discount, and it's going to have a higher value within a reasonable person's perspective of within that 10-year scope, I'd like to think you're probably in the scheme of things for this tax program.
Dion, the advice that we had received within the last week from specialists kind of in this area was that substantially improved means that you put more money into rehab than the value of the land. That was the test that he had advised. Whether
So
that's true.
You know, look, I'm just going to talk because it's a little bit of a private group, and I'm just going to express my opinion of that idea. I don't think anybody really knows that. Somebody came up with the idea of substantially improved. Nobody really understands how to quantify substantially improved. It's naive. If we're all responsible investors, it's naive to think that blight in one area of any, you know, opportunity zone is equal to any other area, and therefore a capital investment to acquire blighted property may not necessarily be equal to or less than what it takes to recapitalize that blighted piece of property to become active again. That's a set of economics that is, you know, we have to recognize that real estate is non-homogeneous. It's unique. So making blanket rules like what the Treasury is doing right now, it's difficult. And so that's why for me, to the rest of you, relax. You're going to hear these broad strokes of the way that we categorize this, but that's going to have to be broke down differently. In California, the baseline of your asset purchase is different than in Gary. I can go buy some assets for $500. Make no bones about it. You guys can. So if I have to substantially improve it, and all I have to do is put $500 into it, what is that? Mowing the lawn for 10 years? I mean, and so that's exactly what they don't mean, just for the record. You are not allowed to land bank any of these assets. They want you to improve them. So what I'm saying is, I'm not the one to interpret Treasury rules or IRS rules or any of that, but certainly as logical people understanding these kinds of things, and I've seen this kind of stuff, we have to take a step back. We have to use our best judgment. That's where we are right now. This is a new program. This is literally the first wave. So for us, we're staring at several $1 million going out at the end of Q4 here. And this is our first wave. And I know that we have a couple other waves of capital coming through after this. And so I'm super, this is one of the most exciting, invigorating, and one of the best real estate investment programs I think I've ever seen in my whole life, to be honest with you. You heard it here first. So I don't know if we really understand how this flows and how this works, because it's a beautiful, it's the more I look at this program, it's a beautiful program. Because I think, one more second, Steve.
Yeah.
I think what happens here is, if I'm an investor, I can invest until 2026. So I can take wave one of my capital deferment and buy real property. I can take wave two in the next year of my capital deferment and improve that real property. And I can take wave three of my capital in year three and capitalize the operation of that property.
Mm-hmm.
And all three of those waves of capital deferment can run through this opportunity. And that's the key. We can layer real property and intangible property on top of stuff. And we can create, this is a beautiful marketplace right now, because we can create layers of opportunity, and we can do it in a way that is probably orchestrated properly. We have to acquire the dilapidated real property, which is going to be for peanuts on the dollar. We have to determine how we're going to improve that real property, which is going to be market price. And then we have to understand who's going to operate it, because anybody operating in these zones should also experience that same tax benefit. So if you're the landlord, if I'm the property owner, and I'm going to capitalize that asset, I might as well stick my finger in the pudding for the tenants and help organize or incentivize that business. And so, I'll share an up-and-coming project that we have in our area, because it's a good example and it's an interesting example. So we have a relationship with, as I mentioned, we have a relationship with the city of Gary. I know some of the master developers that are in the city. This particular project is actually a data center project. And this data center project is an interesting thing. So this will be a project that spans from Gary to Inglewood, which is over in Illinois. Inglewood is another, deprived census district. And then there's another district up in on the north side of the city, which I apologize, I can't remember. Moral of the story is there's a redundancy through the data center. This is a plug and play sort of data center. But because it's got a small footprint and it's catering to the urban, the urban environment, they're actually starting to make deals with local universities to lease some of the space for this equipment. Plus, they're making some accredited educational programs to allow these institutions, universities, to allow students to get in, start to create curriculum and an accredited program to learn data center management and all of the things that come through, which obviously supports, an urban environment like that, where, the baseline jobs, $70,000, $80,000 a year. So that's a good deal. The universities have been very receptive to this. So we understand who this developer is. We have a good relationship with him. There's deals like this that are starting to come up a lot. Data center stuff is pretty interesting. And there's, the negotiations here. It's just a couple of the board members. I'll just point out Vance Kenny here. This is a partner of ours. He is he's the master developer for the city of Gary in the downtown corridor. Good friend of mine. He is leading this situation here, and this is a multi opportunity zone project. And so I think I don't think we understand what these zones can do just yet. We're only through the first initial shot of this. And a lot of this is test phase money. But I tell you what, come 2019, there's going to be a lot of determined capital, because everybody sitting here that's just now learning about this, and me included, we're late to the party. We've raised $5 million, that's already done this. They're telling me how it goes. So there's experience here. There's people that have already done. There's people that have already got this, and everybody else is just catching up, and that's okay because it's still beginning. But I think, again, I'm going to say this again. In my opinion, whatever opportunity zone you can go find that you can be comfortable with, that you can find, comfortable operators, identifiers, and resources in, this is going to be a pretty big opportunity for you to put your gains in and come out very, very well in a couple of years. This is what we've all been waiting for. And now I'll turn it over. And Steve, you're back.
All right. I said you're going to run like 30 seconds and wrap, and that was 10 minutes ago. Thanks for taking over my webinar. So I want to bring us to a close. I haven't seen any questions up in the board. We covered what happens when something goes wrong and comes out okay. The opportunity zone was the big thing that I wanted to talk about. We're chasing the same sort of things in Pensacola, where we've been doing work.
Steve,
yes.
I'd say this. I'd love to do another couple sessions on that idea. So if the group here wants more info, if we can start to disseminate that, I can bring more of our team, more of our resources, more of the stuff that's opportunistic.
Okay.
I'd love to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course. So let's let everybody go home. I want to thank you all for coming on, and we will put this up on YouTube and distribute it out, the link out to folks that were on the call. Please share it with your friends and fellow investors. We're trying to build a community here for everybody to trade ideas. We're back at this the second Wednesday of every month. And like I said, Dion just offered to do another round of this, so we'll probably do something in between. In the meantime, if you've got something you want to talk about, let me know. And I want to thank you all. And I'm going to end the call now. So thanks. All right.